Good evening, Scotland. Good evening, social media land. I hope you are well. It is Monday, the 2nd of January, 2023. I wanted my first video of the year to bring an appropriate amount of genuine attention to something that will seriously affect both those fighting for independence and those that actively believe in what was once called the Union. Within a year, all EU legislation will be amended, repealed or replaced under a new bill that was introduced on Thursday, the 22nd of September 2022, and has been nicknamed the Brexit Freedoms Bill. This sounds amazing for all those Brexiteers out there, but in truth, it will be a disaster of deregulation that sends workers' rights right back to the Victorian era. This bill is set to remove your right to paid holidays, your right to maternity and paternity leave, TUPE protections, ICE regulations, agency workers regulations, part-time workers regulations, fixed-term employment regulations, and working time regulations. Many Tories are very excited about this, as from their point of view, it will allegedly cut a load of red tape preventing growth and the ability to actually employ people. That is obviously just one side of the coin, of course. But let's hear from Ben Bradley, a Tory MP for Mansfield. Just listen to how excited and giddy he is about this deregulation.
Some good Brexit-related news today, as government have announced a new Brexit Freedoms Bill that aims to cut about £1 billion worth of red tape from our EU days, get rid of it all, start again, and have a different system of business structure and regulation in the UK. Something we're free to do now we've left the EU. So on top of trade deals and free ports and the other benefits of that freedom, now going to start chipping away at that bureaucracy, which will be music to the ears of some of the regular businesses that I chat to, who, one of which in particular, asks me every time I see him, what have we done to make things simpler and cut regulation for business, help economic growth, help them to employ people. Hopefully now we'll have some more to say. We'll have some answers to that. Really good news. Obviously, the more we can take advantage of those Brexit benefits, the better for local residents in terms of jobs, economic growth and prosperity for the UK.
The protections that these regulations put in place for the average worker are things we take so much for granted. Take, for instance, your right to paid holidays. Will you be able to afford to take time off work without paid holidays? Your right to maternity and paternity leave. Do you want to be forced back to work upon a new arrival in your family? TUPE or TUPE protections is where a business changes owner. Its employees may be protected under the transfer of undertakings and protection of employment, but without them, you may find yourself in a position of forced redundancies, non-consultative changes in contracts, or even worse. The information and consultation of employees, ICE regulations. These regulations require that employees are informed and consulted on all contractual issues in the workplace. No ICE regulations makes it far easier to fire and rehire, with worse off contracts implied upon you. You know, things like that P&O ferry fiasco last year with the fire and rehire. Then you've got the agency workers regulations. These regulations aim to combat discrimination against people who work for employment agencies by stating that the agency worker should be no less favourably treated in pay and working time than their full-time counterparts who undertake the same work. Without these regulations, they could fire you and bring in agency contractors and pay them less. The part-time workers regulations. These regulations were originally introduced to ensure that part-time workers were not treated less favourably than full-time employees. This will affect all part-time workers across these islands, placing them in a position where they could be exploited or easily removed from the workplace. Fixed-term employees regulations. Fixed-term workers have the right to no less favourable treatment, again, than a comparable permanent employee with regards to the terms of their contract. The working time regulations. These regulations direct the amount of time you are legally entitled to for breaks and periods of rest between working hours. It also regulates the amount of work you can do in a week, i.e. 48-hour week on average. If you're under 18, you cannot work more than 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week. Without this directive, that will go, and you could be forced into working overtime greater than what is legally expected now. The effect that this sort of deregulation will have on Scotland is staggering. Last year, Natalie Dawn, MSP for Renfrewshire North and West, asked these pertinent questions in Holyrood.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the possible impact on its legislative programme of the UK Government's proposed Brexit Freedoms Bill.
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Natalie Dawn brings up an important point. It is simply impossible at this stage to assess the full impact of Brexit Freedoms Bill on the legislative programme, given how little information has been shared with us by the UK Government. We only saw the full list of laws that the UK Government plans to change when it was published last week. Mr Rees-Mogg has asked the public to identify which retained EU laws it wants to do away with, but he has not asked anyone, including the Scottish Government, which laws should be kept.
Natalie Dawn.
Thank the Minister for that answer. Yet the lack of respect shown towards the devolved nations by this bill is staggering, and the uncertainty it causes for the work of this Parliament is deeply concerning. Can the Scottish Government offer assurance that it will provide what certainty it can by staying committed to the plans laid out in the programme for government and the principles of the EU Continuity Act?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As Ms Dawn says, the Scottish people did not vote for Brexit. We have been clear that this Government believes that future independent Scotland should seek to rejoin the EU as soon as possible, and that maintaining alignment with current EU laws will help us achieve that aim. It is impossible to know what full consequences of the Brexit Freedoms Bill will be, given how little information. But one final point, Presiding Officer. The main purpose of the bill appears to give the UK Government the freedom to abandon legislation that has protected Scottish interests for almost 50 years.
It matters not if you are pro-Indy or pro-Westminster rule. You're about to be deregulated to the point where the protections we rely upon to maintain a normal standard of life will be removed. And if you think that this is okay, then you need to have a serious word with yourself. The sunset on these regulations are the 1st of January 2024. This is less than a year away now. So to all you Anglo British nationalists who find comfort in mocking and berating us indie folks, understand this. You sound utterly ridiculous when you do so now, as you are just promoting the deregulation of your own workers' rights. The only way now to protect these rights is to enshrine them into law in an independent Scotland. The Tories won't protect them, and Labour won't also, as they too play to the Anglo British Nationalist vote. And the right-wing propaganda machine, they will spin this to sound like something really great, with only the truly naive believing it. The clock is ticking, people. If you are not already indie folk, it's definitely time to reassess your values and consider what the lesser of two evils may actually be for you. Just think. No more paid holidays. I quite like having paid holidays. Have a think about that next time you're booking your time off work. Will you have enough in your bank account to cover not only your 2 weeks off in Cost to Dell, wherever, but also your bills, your rent, your mortgage, all those things too? Did you know? Even Russian workers have their paid holidays protected in law. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and good luck.